I feel that our democracy is in danger in a way that I've never seen in my 2 decades of public service. The reality of the situation is I am the only candidate in this race that has been on 87% of the voters' ballots repeatedly, over 300,000 votes, compared to Senator Kavanaugh, who has only been elected twice.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Welcome to the hottest political podcast in Nebraska, The Dan Parsons Show. And I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Coming up on today's show, we'll continue to feature candidates for the Democratic nomination for Congress in Omaha's 2nd District. Today, we chat with Crystal Rhoades. But before I introduce Crystal, a shout out to our Friends of Dan, the Patreon support team. If you'd like to support the #1 political podcast in Nebraska with your hard-earned cash, hop on over to patreon.com, look up the Dan Parsons Show, and join the fun. Not only will you be supporting this show, you'll get exclusive bonus content, including 2 bonus questions from today's guest. Okay, here's my interview with Crystal Rhoades, candidate to represent Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District. Enjoy. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce Crystal Rhoades, candidate for the Democratic nomination for Nebraska's 2nd District, which, as our astute audience knows, has become one of the most competitive races in America. Crystal, welcome to the Dan Parsons Show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with a little background. You currently hold the elected position of clerk of the district court for Douglas County in Omaha, elected in 2022. Previously, you served as a member of the Metropolitan Community College Board from 2006 to 2014, and then served a statewide elected office in Nebraska Public Service Commission from the 2nd District from 2015 to 2023. You've got a long track record of helping Democrats get elected, including John Ewing's historic campaign earlier this year to become the first Democrat to lead the largest city in Nebraska in roughly a decade. So I guess, Crystal, my first question is, why do you want to serve in Congress?
I'm very concerned about what I see happening there, which is a whole lot of nothing. I have been a long observer of politics, and I noticed very quickly after the second Trump administration began that it was very clear that Congress was not going to do anything to check this president. I feel that our democracy is in danger in a way that I've never seen in, my 2 decades of public service. And I also have been working very diligently here over the last decade to help us obtain that blue dot and get turnout where it needed to be so that we could flip the seat. So all the pieces kind of came together, and I decided that now was the time to get into the race.
Yeah. You were quoted in the Nebraska Examiner. Well, first of all, let me just back up and acknowledge that, yes, this CD2 has become, like I said earlier, one of the most competitive congressional races in America. The blue dot, the famous blue dot, and it's pretty evenly split. But so you were quoted in the Nebraska Examiner when you made your announcement that your internal polling, which I believe was back in June, according to the Nebraska Examiner, that indicates that you and State Senator John Kavanaugh, another candidate for this seat, are basically tied among Democratic primary voters.
Yes.
Your polling also showed that another candidate, Denise Powell, is a distant third. A characterization, obviously, that Powell's campaign describes as wrong. So it's early. The May 2026 primary is, 8 months away now. Any new polling you'd like to share exclusively with the Dan Parsons Show audience? And, Yeah, how do you assess the race at this early stage?
Yeah, no, so we won't be repeating that polling at this stage of the, at this stage of the race. Look, I've been doing these races a long time. I was the former county party chair. I've been winning my own races in this district for 20 years and helping other people do it for about 15 now. Um, the reality of the situation is I am the only candidate in this race that has been on 87% of the voters' ballots repeatedly. So my lifetime vote total, between the 8 years I spent on the community college board and then the 8 years I spent on the public service commission in the bigger district than the metro board and now a county-wide office, 300,000 votes compared to, Senator Kavanaugh, who's only been elected twice, having a much, much smaller district. So it really is at this point about who do the voters know at this stage of the game. Of course, he comes from a legacy family where several members of his family have served. But when we were assessing the race and looking at those districts, I've been on the ballot in 233 precincts. And if you take all of the different Kavanaughs holding office, from that particular family, it's something like 53. So voters are going to be familiar with me. Almost all of the races that I've been involved in for myself have been during midterms. And so these voters are voters that are very familiar with me, both in my capacity as one of their elected officials and as someone who has been flipping seats from red to blue across this district for a very long time. So I think that puts me in a really strong position here. And frankly, part of my decision and my waiting this out was, Senator Kavanaugh had approached me about working for him. I generally like to avoid messy, expensive, contested primaries whenever possible because I know how difficult it is to recruit candidates and get them elected. And so I hate to see so many well-qualified candidates in a single race if it can be avoided. So I considered that. But what it really came down to in the end was that, Senator Kavanaugh, it represents me in the legislature. And if he is elected to Congress, Jim Pillen will be replacing him. And I just couldn't stomach that. We are holding on to the blue dot, holding off a winner-take-all bill passing in the Nebraska Unicam by a single vote. And the risk was more than I was, that risk for our community and frankly, for the Republic, was more than I was willing to tolerate. As you said, this is a really competitive district. It's one of only 3 districts in the entire country where the presidential candidate, both in 2020 and in 2024, the electoral college vote went to the presidential candidate, and we had retained our Republican incumbent congressman. That's only happened in 2 other places in the whole country. So this is a big deal. This seat really, really matters. And I think that the voters deserve somebody who's experienced and that can win it. And also who, frankly, doesn't have any problem telling Republicans no when they're misbehaving. And that has certainly been a criticism of me for many years, but I love that about it. I love being their favorite boogeyman. That's cool,
Well, yeah. Well, as an old political hack myself, I agree with that assessment. Yeah, you certainly seem to have the name recognition because, as you said, because you've been on the ballot many, many times. I love the granular analysis of the numbers. That's good. So it is going to be an expensive race as well, right? I mean, these seats don't come open very often, and obviously in off presidential years, the party in power traditionally loses seats in Congress. I think all indications are a lot can change in this next year, obviously, but all indications are that that's certainly very likely again across the country this year. So So maybe talk a little bit, since we're geeking out about campaigns, talk about how expensive this race is going to be. I mean, and how those dollars are going to be divided up, because obviously with this many candidates on the Democratic side, you're all going to be pulling from similar sources. What's it going to take to win this race?
Yeah, I mean, look, people are going to spend a lot of money, right? Everybody wants who they want, and people, I think, understand the importance of this district in this moment. So I think people are going to spend a lot of money. For me, I don't think I have to spend as much, in part because the voters do know me as well as they do, and because I have been a longtime public servant. But it's still going to be an expensive race, right? I mean, you're running for Congress, it's expensive. That means TV, that means digital, that means mail. It's a bigger district with a lot more people to reach. So we do expect that. But having managed many races, having been not only the candidate, but also the consultant on races, will be able to control costs a little bit better, I think, than anybody else, because I actually know what stuff really costs.
Yep. Yes.
So,
yeah. Yes.
And I also have a lot of experience in targeting myself. So I know the difference between what's necessary to win a race and what's necessary for vendors to make money. So the taxpayers can always, and the donors for the campaign can count on me to take out my sharp pencil and make sure that not a penny is being wasted. And I think, look, this is going to be a multi-million-dollar race. There's no question.
Yep.
There's just no question.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, let's talk about the news of the day. We're recording this on a Wednesday. Just yesterday, Governor Jim Pillen announced that the state of Nebraska has agreed to work with the Trump administration to create Nebraska's version of Alligator Alcatraz, a federal immigration detention center in McCook, Nebraska. Your thoughts?
I'm going to show you something.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning to show you this, but I recently had this room painted, and I just this morning asked my husband, "Can you please start putting my gallery wall back up?"
Nice.
That lady there, see her? Can you see her? Am I doing a bad job there? There we go. There she is.
Yes.
That lady there. She used to hang in the Mount Fuji Inn's Mai Tai Lounge, and that's an old. It was an old restaurant here in town. Mm-hmm. And I worked there as a cocktail waitress. And when they closed the place down, I went and I bought that.
Nice.
Yes, I had wonderful memories of working there. It was a great experience for me. I paid a lot of my student loan debt with that, earning that money. But that's not why I have that painting there. I have it there because the woman who founded and ran that business for decades and who built it from nothing was interned in the Japanese internment camps. And I've been thinking a lot about her lately as we have been talking about this immigration issue. And it just sickens me. It's not humane, the way that we're treating these people. It's not right, ethically, morally, legally. But it's also just not smart economically. Somewhere between 40 and 45% of all agricultural workers, the people that process our food and make sure that it gets to our tables, are undocumented workers. And ripping these families apart and destabilizing them and deporting them without due process is absolutely unconscionable. It is disgusting. And it's a lot like those Japanese internment camps. And I think that it is absolutely critical that Congress take immediate action on immigration. I think that we do need immigration reform. And I don't think that there's any question about that. But Congress hasn't been doing its job. And now you've got this person in office who is acting independently, unilaterally, outside of the scope of his authority, and nobody's doing anything about it. That has got to stop. I've gotten a lot of questions about, well, would you have liked to have had it by the airport? And I'm like, no, I don't want concentration camps anywhere.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about another issue that, is impacting Nebraska, tariffs. How will Nebraska be impacted by the president's trade war? Or how is it being currently impacted by the trade war?
We're already seeing the impact to our farmers. There's no question that it's impacting them. And we know that there's going to be additional impacts because it's not just about what we're selling and what's going out and the retaliatory tariffs that are being charged and the loss of our access to many of these markets as a result of this trade war, but it's also the products that we're trying to get. I think that's going to continue to escalate. I think we're going to see additional inflation costs. I don't think the economists are divided on that impact and what they expect to see coming. And that they anticipate that it's going to continue to be a destabilization. And yet another example that Congress is not doing their jobs. Tariffs, immigration policy, those are things that are clearly defined as responsibilities of Congress, not the president, not the executive branch. And they're just failing to do their job. And that has to stop. We need to elect people who are willing to go in there and actually do the thing that they've been elected to do.
Yeah. The big, beautiful bill.
Oh, geez.
By the way, I just have difficulty even saying that. But anyway, that's what we're calling it. Mm-hmm. Congressman Bacon, who obviously announced he's not running for re-election. When I had him on the show a couple months back, he said, I just think there's a lot of goodness in this bill, and we worked hard to make sure we protect the most needy, whether it's Medicaid or SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Do you agree with his assessment? And would you have voted for the big, beautiful bill?
No and no. So I grew up very working class. I actually attended public schools. I was a free and reduced price lunch kid. I went to a public university on a full ride scholarship funded by an appropriation from the Nebraska Unicamp, taxpayer dollars. I ended up still having to take out massive student loans and use Pell Grants to pay for childcare and housing because those things were really difficult to afford, even though I was working full time and going to school full time as a young single mom. These programs, Medicaid, WIC, free and reduced price lunches, public education, student loans, without the benefit of those programs, all of which have been harmed by the big, beautiful bill, I would not have been able to be where I am today. I wouldn't have completed college. I wouldn't have earned myself a spot in the middle class. I wouldn't be a homeowner. I wouldn't be able to pay the level of taxes, both property and consumption. Like, it's just bad. It's just bad. It's so bad for working people. And it doesn't even help. It doesn't even help the billionaires all that much. I mean, it's just bad across the board. The preliminary numbers is that they think that somewhere around 30,000 people in our district in CD2 potentially are going to be losing their health care. That creates a public health crisis. It's just, none of this is good. Absolutely none of it is good. I've yet to find any virtue anywhere in that bill, or any kind of tangible benefit that we're gaining. I don't see its benefit. I disagree with him. And no, I absolutely would not have voted for that bill.
Yeah. Also in my interview with the congressman recently, we talked about how under the Trump administration, we're abandoning our defense of democracy in Europe, specifically the war in Ukraine. Now President Trump is trying to, apparently, even though he said it would solve that problem in 24 hours, it's taken at least 8 months to get people together and make that effort. And Congressman Bacon obviously has brought considerable military experience to the role, and he wasn't afraid. I'll give him credit. I gave him credit to buck his party, at least in words from time to time, about the continued defense of Ukraine. Assuming that issue is still relevant when you take office, should you win, how would you deal with the war in Ukraine?
Listen, I think we have to be supportive of Ukraine here. Putin is stealing from Ukraine. And he has started a war, and he is threatening all of Europe. He is out of line. And I don't think that there's any question in anyone's mind, in Europe, certainly, that allowing him to take Ukraine will only embolden him and encourage him to extend that march. I think that the last time we saw something like that, it ended very badly for the entire world, as I recall. And that efforts need to be taken to preserve their democracy and to support them in their fight to protect their country. They have the right to defend themselves, and we should be supportive of that.
Yeah. One of our final questions, if I may. I had John Morante on today, recorded yesterday, former state senator, former state treasurer for the state of Nebraska. And the reason I had John on was I reminded him that back when he served in the legislature, I believe it was 2016, he and Heath Mello introduced legislation and passed legislation to reform redistricting in Nebraska. Passed fairly comfortably. Maybe to no surprise to a lot of people, then Governor Ricketts vetoed that measure, and they chose not to challenge that veto. So now here we are, fast forward that President Trump is looking for more Republican votes in Congress. And obviously Texas is meeting. I think that bill is probably going to advance maybe this week. And so now we've got an arms race going on. Governor Newsom in California said, I see your 5 members that you think you're going to gain in Texas, and I'll raise you 5 or 6 Democrat candidates or seats here in California. Mm-hmm. So what's your perspective on that? How, and I guess maybe in a broader picture, Crystal, one of the themes of this podcast is A, lifting up instead of tearing down, and B, truth over tribalism. I know a lot of people like me are sick of this red versus blue team, and if you're not on one of those teams, you don't have a seat at the table. How do we stop this? How does this ever end? Because the bottom line is we ain't getting shit done. Anyway, your perspective. Take that any way you like. Your perspective on that. I
think that midterm redistricting is bananas. I think that I don't agree with this gerrymandering arms race. The Republicans are right. The elections are rigged. And this is where the rigging happens. Right here, right now. When they're drawing the maps. There's no question we need serious electoral reform. And part of that reform needs to be specifically on redistricting, on variations. We need to go back to the voting. We need a new Voting Rights Act, really an updated one that addresses gerrymandering, that addresses when and how these districts are allowed to be drawn, and puts really firm guardrails on them so that we have, frankly, more balanced and competitive districts, so that you're not having both the right and the left having their districts drawn by the most hyper-partisan people possible. And how fair the map is really depends on what the composition is of the people who are drawing them. All of that needs reformed. I think there are a number of other reforms that Congress should be looking at, and that I would love the opportunity to explore. I happen to think that a mandatory retirement age is something that we ought to be considering. You get to 70 years old, you get to finish your term, and thank you for your service. I think that there are reforms that would be really beneficial and that would definitely help us. But right now, it's very clear that the way that our system is functioning has degraded in such a way that it is becoming untenable. Redrawing the maps at every election is just absolutely crazy. I mean, there's just, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Crystal Rhoades, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it very much. How can people learn more about your campaign and talk to you and meet you and give you money and all the things that are involved in this congressional race?
Best way to find me is on the internet, and I can be found at Crystal with the number 4 Congress. Very simple, Crystal with the C, 4Congress.com. And there you can link to all of my socials, find out information about the campaign, contribute if you're so inclined, volunteer if you have time but no treasure. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Very good. Thank you very much. Best of luck. For our friends of Dan, the Patreon membership support team, stick around because Crystal's going to be back with us to do a little extra bonus content. But for now, Crystal, thanks for your service, and thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks, Crystal, for joining me today. Best of luck with your run for Congress. And if you're a friend of Dan, our Patreon support team, look for exclusive bonus content with Crystal. Not a friend of Dan? Just hop on over to patreon.com and sign up. Hey, and don't forget to show us some love and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Thanks to the Parsons team who made this show possible. Chase Porter, executive producer. Ike Samanis, producer and graphic design. Penology, tech solutions for their technical help and equipment. And Kim Remington, Parsons PR's director of operations. Hey, and thanks to each of you for your support and for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.